Hello and welcome to the garden in March. You're joining me on a rather chilly but beautiful spring morning, and I thought I would share the whole garden with you today, do a proper garden tour so you really understand how this space works. And I thought I'd start down here. This is right down near the house, and this is our little terrace garden. So just for a little bit of context, we're based down in the far southwest of Cornwall, so we do have some of the advantages of the Cornish climate. So we get some cooler days in the summer, but we also get the milder days in the winter, and that does really help us when we are growing things here in Cornwall. We've owned the farm now for 8 years, and we live here with my mum, but the first 4 years were focused on building an annex for my mum to live in and for the renovations of the main farmhouse. So the garden really took a back seat. So we only started properly developing the garden in around 2021. Before we bought the property, it had become quite run down and overgrown. So we had to do quite a lot of work just to peel back some of the overgrowth that had happened. And you'll see some of that when we go around. I'll explain what the garden was like. So we built this terrace about 4 years ago, and it's such a sun trap. So I decided that I wanted to put lots of Mediterranean plants in here. So we built the raised beds out of scaffold planks, and they've worked really, really well. And then we've got lots and lots of lovely herbs in here. There's the olive tree. And then we also built this log wall because we have lots of trees in our woodland. We had lots and lots of bits of timber that we didn't necessarily need for burning in our wood burners. We had some leftovers, so we decided to build this log wall, and it works really, really well as a windbreak, and it's also great for lots of hibernating insects as well. So it has a double purpose. And then from the terrace we go up into the cottage garden. So this is the cottage garden. It is a work in progress. I would love to spend more time in here than I actually do, but because I'm so busy in the summer months working in the cut flower field, actually this doesn't get anywhere near as much attention as it deserves. A few years ago, it was just mud. There was no grass. We did an extension to the back of the farmhouse, and we had diggers and dumpers coming through here. So we had to completely reseed all of this to give us a lawn, and I cut in the beds. The only thing that remains of what was originally here is the acre tree and camellia and Japanese laurel, which are down in the central island bed. But I've popped in lots of things here. I've got quite eclectic taste. So I've got some grasses, there is some tree ferns, and then I've got lots of herbaceous perennials. And I join that with lots of annuals. I'm quite lucky that when I have too many things that I can't fit into the cut flower field, they end up here. So The cottage garden works well because it can sometimes end up being a bit of a mishmash of colours and different things, but in a cottage garden setting, it doesn't really matter. So this is where the garden really starts to open up. To my left, we have the hens, which is where we have a few fruit trees, including a plum, a cherry, and an apple tree. And then over to my right, we've got the vegetable gardens where my mum grows lots and lots of lovely veggies through the summer months. And we also have the polytunnels in this area. So it's quite a productive space here. I thought I'd really quickly show you this area in a bit more detail. So we've got two polytunnels here, and I'm hoping that we're going to be able to pop a third polytunnel just next to this smaller one. And we grow lots of things in the polytunnels all year round. So the big polytunnel, I grow things over the winter months to give me an early crop in the springtime. I also grow things that are a little bit more tender, or they're a heat-loving plant in the summer months, and it also protects them from any deluges of rain that we might get. So lots of the white flowers that I grow, I quite often will keep some of them in the polytunnel as well as in the field, because I'm trying to protect them from some of the heavy rainfall that we can sometimes get in our British summers. The small polytunnel is used by me during the spring months for propagating my seedlings, and then my mum takes over from the middle of spring with things like tomatoes, cucumbers, aubergines and peppers. So she fills it up with all of those lovely heat-loving vegetables for us to eat. So this is the grass meadow. It is a space where we let the grass grow long through the summer months, and then in the autumn it's cut down by a tractor. We encourage the wildflowers here, and we cut paths through so that we can access the rest of the property without disturbing the grass. Having the long grass means that we get things like swallows coming and feeding on the insects that live within the long grass during the summer months, and it also sounds alive as well, with all of the grasshoppers singing in the warmer weather. We've got a little bit of interest in this field. We've got some planting. I've planted some shrubs down here, which I use for foliage for my floristry. We also have got some cardoons and some raised beds filled with spring bulbs down at the bottom here. And then right up at the top, my mum has created a labyrinth cut into the grass, which looks really, really beautiful. So we're next door to the grass meadow now, and we're in the cutting field. So behind me is the cutting garden, which you probably will recognise from February. And we also in this area have the orchard, which was planted a few years ago, and we quite recently put in a couple more fruit trees to replace things that the deer decided to eat. And in the orchard we have apple trees as well as ornamental cherry and ornamental crab apple, and the idea is that I can use the fruit, but we can also use all of those beautiful blossoming branches in the springtime. And cherry trees in particular have a beautiful autumnal colour as well, which can be really useful for my floristry work. So although it's an orchard, it is also a productive space for floristry. So we're on a little piece of ground here overlooking the cut flower field, and it's the only piece of flat ground that we have on the entire property. It used to be a croquet lawn. The people that lived here before used to love croquet, so they created this incredible flat piece of ground. They carved it out of the hillside, and we're lucky enough to be able to enjoy that. So the children come up here and play football. We have the trampoline up here. They play up here all the time. We can do camping up here. So this is a really lovely family space, which we use a lot. So we've come up to the very top of the property now, to the woodland, and there's about an acre of woodland here in total. But when we first took over the property 8 years ago, you couldn't even see into it. It was so dense and overgrown with blackthorn and bramble that it was impenetrable. But now we have cleared through and we've created paths. The bluebells have started to return, and it is a much more usable space for both us as well as nature. So here in the woodland, it's really divided into two halves. We've got a more formal part down here, which is centered around the woodland circle, which we created using some of the logs that have been felled from this woodland. And it's planted with things like camellias and hydrangea, azalea, there's daffodils underplanted, and it really has a more kind of woodland garden feel. Whereas the other half of the woodland is a wilder part. We have lots of bluebells that come up in the springtime. Then the campions and the nettles come up, and we let those grow and go wild. We just cut a path running through the woodland so that we can access it. But it's really a space that's for the birds and the insects to enjoy. So thank you for joining me on today's garden tour. If you've enjoyed it, please do hit the like button, and don't forget you can subscribe if you want to see what we're up to every single month. And I look forward to seeing you next time.